We're here, folks. It's finally time. After witnessing this series back to back to back to back to back again, we have finally reached the Final Fantasy of Legend. The one game that many people consider to be the absolute pinnacle of the series. The one game that surpasses even the likes of 7, 9, and 10 for many. Final Fantasy VI. Now, I had some very high expectations for this game, and after playing and beating it, I can say that those expectations were very, very much met. To the point where Final Fantasy VI may just be my absolute favorite Final Fantasy game, but also probably one of my favorite games I've ever played. So what exactly does this game do so well? Does it even screw up anywhere? Or on anything? Well, let's get into that, shall we? I'm Crimson Rosso, and welcome to my review of Final Fantasy VI, and how it was a motherfucking masterpiece. First things first in this little review of mine, let us talk about just how damn pretty this game is. Now, in order to play Final Fantasy VI, I bought and played through the Pixel Remaster. It has a lot of what made the 3's Pixel Remaster so beautiful to look at. Updated character models and areas similar to the other remasters, but to my surprise, there was something in this that I was not really expecting. And that was the infamous Opera House scene getting completely remade into a 2D HD cutscene, with new animations and even actual voice acting for the song, which was a vast improvement over the goofy little owl sounds they did in the original, due to their hardware limitations. It's still good in the original, but I think the actual voices here made the scene much better. The upscale dungeons were also an eye to behold as a first-time player. I really loved how they looked and just how creative they are in terms of exploration. Some of my absolute favorites were the Vector Capital Factory and the floating continent itself. Also, Kefka's Tower, the final dungeon, had a really cool idea where you just controlled 3 at the same time and did all the puzzles, but we'll get into more of that later. Either way, they all had cool mechanics that were fun to move around in and never entered that tedious territory. And that's really all I have to say about the graphics. There was this one thing that I felt like the monster designs looked a little off, but it was never enough of a problem where I thought it was like, hey, that's really ugly, because those sprites still looked very, very pretty. Everything just looked downright amazing, plain and simple. So, with that said, I think it's time we moved on to gameplay next. Now, Final Fantasy VI, like 4, decided to, sadly, once again ditch the job system in favor of a Final Fantasy IV style of having everyone a set class with their own special abilities. Longtime fans of Final Fantasy will recognize quite a few of them. One character can throw, another can steal, one has blue magic, you know how it is. But what caught me by surprise were just how many new skills were introduced in this game. One such skill was the runic ability, where the character using turns into sort of a homing beacon for magic that they absorb for some free MP. There's also the sketch skill, where a party member paints a picture of one of your enemies and uses their attack on them, which is honestly pretty funny to see in action. Plus you can evolve it later on with an equipable item that makes it even better. But out of all of these though, my favorite new skills were without a doubt the Tools and Blitz ability. Used by Edgar and Sabin, 2 brothers you meet in the game that we will get to later, I really loved how each acted. The Tools command had Edgar pull out various devices like drills, chainsaws, and crossbows to pulverize the enemies. Plus, certain tools like the Flash or Noise Blaster inflict status effects when used. My favorite was always the chainsaw though, mainly for the little added detail of Edgar pulling on a Jason mask whenever he lands an insta-kill. Really cute detail there, and I'm glad they added it. And then there's the Blitz, where Sabin can unleash various martial arts techniques to wail on your opponents or even heal your party. But unlike the Tools section, where it's just open up and use them, the Blitz commands are activated by inputting button prompts, which I found real fun, especially since if you messed up any of the button prompts, it would just restart the inputs with no punishment. The skills were a blast to use, but you're probably wondering to yourself about the other class skills, like Dragoon. Where are they in this game? Well, you can obtain those lost skills thanks to the all-new Relic system. So 6 decided to change up the equipment from what it normally was from the first 5 games, to now you can equip things known as relics instead of accessories. And these relics do a lot more than the original accessories did. See, unlike accessories which just usually gave you stat boosts and some elemental resistances, relics boost your stats and do all sorts of crazy other shit. For example, there was one that gave you older skills from Final Fantasy V, like the Thieves' sprinting increase, or if you put on the Dragoon boots, you turned your attack command into a jump command. But then there was the addition of all the really crazy shit, like the Master Scroll item, which would let you just have multiple attacks in one turn, or something like the Earring relics, where if you had two equipped at the same time, it increased your magic power by a lot, or the Growth Egg, which doubled a character's experience points. There are dozens more of these, by the way, and I loved them. They pretty much doubled the already crazy customization options of the game. That I'm honestly hoping Final Fantasy 7 and 8 have more of these, because I loved this relic stuff. And while all that stuff was great, it actually wasn't my favorite part of the gameplay. No. That went to the all-new way magic was handled. See, unlike something like Final Fantasy IV, where characters had set magic usage, or in Final Fantasy V, where the ability to use magic came with a job class, Final Fantasy VI actually lets you just teach pretty much any party member magic. There are some exceptions, sure. There are a couple party members that cannot learn it, but for the most part, everybody can just wield whatever magic they want. Basically, pretty much every party member can dual wield a class similar to the Freelancer form from Final Fantasy V. The level of customization is now even bigger thanks to this, and it was already pretty nuts, so that's pretty nice. If I'm being real here, the level of customization in 6 kind of blows most games out of the water. So how does it work? Well, the party members learn magic through the use of what's known as Magtite shards. I could be saying that wrong, I don't know. But they're special shards that, when equipped in the ability section, can teach the equipped party member a set amount of spells. And after a set amount of battles, the character permanently learns the spell. But that's not all it does, as every time you level up, the party member can gain an extra boost to their stats if the Magtite they have equipped comes with a boost, like increasing your HP, attack power, speed, all sorts of things. And honestly, there's really nothing more satisfying than winning a battle, getting experience, gold, and then seeing character learned set spell under the EXP layout. Plus, the equipped shard can even summon a god, or Esper as they're called in this game, to aid you in battle with various attacks or buffs. I like the system, and I wonder if this is what started to inspire 9's skill systems. Questions for later, who knows? But that's pretty much it in terms of combat. So let's get into the story and characters next. Going into 6 with all of the hype and praise being given to it, had my expectations rather high for what I was getting into. And after finishing it, I can easily say that not only were those expectations met, but they were surpassed in pretty much every single way, as I was hooked from start to finish. The story starts off with an explanation that several hundreds of years ago, humans and magical beings known as Espers lived in peace. An event happened known as the War of the Magi, a dark incident that caused the Espers to separate from humans, leaving only a few Espers behind, along with the introduction of the Magi, humans who have the ability to use magic without the outside reliance on machines or any sort of source. Honestly, one of my favorite parts of the story is just how magic is handled in it. In 6, people being able to use magic is a rarity. It's honestly a nice change from the first 5 entries I've gone to, where magic was just a pretty common thing to see. You could just buy spells at shops in most of them. Now it's just a genuine shock to see a person cast something like a fire spell. It's a cool concept that's played around with rather well for a good portion of the game. Anyways, back to the plot. We are then introduced to one of the main characters of the game, Terra, a girl with the ability to use magic of her own free will, but is being controlled and used as a slave for the Empire, the main antagonist of this game. And she's being tasked to hunt down the Esper they found hidden in Narshe alongside Biggs and Wedge. Huh, so this is what you guys were up to before you joined Avalanche. I love the opening here. The fact you're basically playing the villain mowing down the good guys is such a unique way to start off any game. We need this kind of shit back in games more. Anyways, you wipe them out, fight a snail, and find the Esper who's just too strong to handle and fucks them all up. Terra then wakes up and learns she was saved by a man who's part of the Returners, a rebel group opposing the Empire's lust for power, and he removed the slave collar controlling her, so now she's free to be her own person, yay! And this is an action that creates the beginning of the single most emotional arc in the game for me, and highlights one of the strongest aspects of 6, its characters. 6 has a lot of characters you meet and fight alongside. Some are mandatory characters like Edgar, Selen, or Cells. But the game also throws optional, incredibly missable party members at you that are pretty crazy. Like, this might be one of the only RPGs I've played where you can recruit a fucking Yeti on the team, as long as you recruited the Moogle. The Assassin Shadow that joins you from time to time, he will join you permanently if you play your cards right. Hell, remember Gogo, the Mimic from 5? Yeah, if you access a secret area in the second half of the game, you can get him as a party member. I honestly love the idea of unlocking extra party members if you're willing to work and look hard enough for them. It really is fun to just unlock this new party member because you actually put in the effort for it. And I can see why they brought this over into 7. And despite there being so many characters, I'm genuinely impressed at how many are able to just develop and have moments that feel emotional and get me to endear them to their character. Like an example is a guy like Setzer, who was introduced as some sleazy, non-caring, thrill-loving, but entertaining douche that just wants to kidnap the lead opera singer so he can marry her. Hard to believe that Twilight Town let this dick become the struggle champion, am I right? And it seems like it would stay that way until the game reaches its second half and you learn about his past. And you really can't help but sympathize with him. Like, I never thought I would feel anything from this guy, but lo and behold, here we are. Then there's characters like Cyan, whose wife and son are killed by the Empire, and a major part of his arc is letting go of his hatred and loss, and the struggles of moving forward that Locke has, or Terra working to understand emotions. So much is conveyed here, it makes most writing in other games look kinda lesser in comparison. I'm not trying to be an elitist, by the way, I just think the writing in this game is phenomenal. Anyways, back to the plot. Nurse gods find out where Terra is being hidden, she escapes, but then gets found and knocked out. Locke appears to help her, and has to fight waves of enemies with the help of the Moogles, which introduces another new mechanic, party battles, where you have to build teams of 3 to combat waves of enemies or go through dungeons. It doesn't happen a lot in the game, but whenever it did, I absolutely loved it. It reminded me of when I was playing Unicorn Overlord and had to plan out who could go with who for the best party synergy. Kinda sad it doesn't happen more often, as there is a lot of untapped potential here. Anyway, Locke teams up with the Moogles, saves Terra, and they escape to meet the King Edgar. He hits on Terra, kind of, then he grants them refuge. That is until he comes along. The single best character in all of 6, and one of the best villains in gaming history, my man Kefka. I love this guy so much, for one singular reason. He is an absolutely deplorable piece of dog shit. See, there's this strange stigma that some people have nowadays that if villains aren't sympathetic or don't have deep motivations, then they aren't very good. That medium is slowly changing thanks to more people turning around to the concept of guys like Jack Homer from Puss in Boots 2, but to this day there are still some people who believe that, and I disagree. Well, to an extent. I think villains with only motivations to hurt can be amazing, but they have to be entertaining in order to carry that, and Kefka is able to do that in spades. He's a lot like the Joker in that he revels in causing pain and destruction wherever he goes just for the sheer joy of it. Like, he poisons a river of drinking water to kill people, and he just laughs at the screams of death that happen. Absolute shithole of a being, and I love him for it. Anyways, he appears, demands Terra, we say no, he sets our castle on fire, we get away from him, meet Sabin in the mountains, then go meet the leader of the Returners, who gives Terra a pep talk about her powers. And then the group splits up, and then you get another awesome aspect of this game, the 3 different stories, where all have an endpoint by meeting up at Narsh, but they have completely different stories on reaching it. Locke infiltrates South Viargo and meets traitor and best girl Cells. Sabin falls off the boat during the fight with Ultros, who's the second best villain in the game due to just being a lovable idiot. Anyways, he runs into Shadow, hires him to help, and meets Cyan, who lost his wife and son due to Kefka's poison water, swears vengeance. They end up on the ghost train and leads to one of the most insane moments I've ever seen. Literally, how? Anyways, after the 3 journeys all wrap up, they meet at Narsh, team up to fight Kefka to keep his group away from the Esper, succeed and have Terra try to converse with the frozen being, which in turn causes Terra to transform into some sort of crazy monster alien and fly away to Zozo, and the cast go after her and meet Ruma. As a result, who tells them to go find more shards to help her. They decide to break into the Imperial capital Vector to get more. But before that, you need an airship, you goof, which is owned by Setzer, who plans to kidnap the lead opera singer Maria during the big play at the Opera House, which you actually just learned by conveniently picking up a letter. Thank God that guy dropped it. And you have to have Cells play a decoy, and then you get to it. The single most beautiful moment in the entire game, the opera scene. It is just as beautiful as I had always heard it was, and even brought a tear to my eye as a result. It was incredibly captivating how these just little 2D sprites conveyed more emotion to me than most 3D games did. Of course, that's all ruined by Ultros showing up and disrupting the play. You challenge him as a member of Octopus royalty for Cell's hand in marriage, and kick his ass again. And then Setzer kidnaps Cells. You sneak on and convince him to help you. Then you head to the Empire capital, where you overhear Kefka having a monologue. And then you make it to the lab where you meet Sid, where the enemy then tries to convince you that Cells is a spy. Cells basically comes across like she sacrifices herself to save the group. You escape and save Terra, learn about her past as a half-human, half-Esper baby, and just how the Empire gained the shards and found Terra in the first place. You return to Narsh, where Terra recommends finding the sealed gate to get the other Espers. You find it, Kefka shows up, the Espers come out, fuck up Vector, which surprisingly gets the Emperor to realize he's wrong and wants peace. He asks for Terra's help to smooth things over, she agrees, and they head off to find the Espers. You end up meeting with Cells again, who's once again working for the Empire, and has some tension with Locke after the events of the factory. You travel to a village that is filled with people that are revealed to be the last members of the Magi, team up with a couple of them to reach the Espers, you chat it up with them and work out the problems all cool like. Locke and Cells make up, and everything seems like it's all about to work out. Until... Ah, Kefka, you absolutely delightful piece of shit. Of course you had a trick up your sleeve. Yeah, so the whole ploy for peace was total bullshit in the end, and was just a play by the Emperor and Kefka to get a bunch of Espers in one place, and turn them into Magtites so they could harvest their energy to awaken the Warring Triad on the floating continent. General Leo, one of the only morally good people in the Empire, tries to put a stop to Kefka, but sadly loses his life in the process. You then build a grade and honor him, and with a newfound resolve, head to the floating continent to take on Kefka and gang. And here it is, you probably think to yourself, well, it's time. We reached the final battle with the Empire. Shadow's back, and it's time to finish the game and put a stop to their evil. I was ready to beat them once and for all and finish this game. But then, something happened. Instead of this being the big finale, Kefka pulls one of the most insane twists I've seen and betrays the Emperor to gain the powers of the Warring Triad to become a god and rule the world. And the thing is, we don't stop him. Yeah, unlike all of the other Final Fantasy titles so far, the villain actually wins here. As someone who has never played this game before and went in pretty much as blind as possible, this blew my fucking mind. I legit never expected they would pull something like this. And God, did it win me over even more than before. After this, the world is now gone. It is no longer the world of balance. It is now the world of ruin. And instead of starting off playing as Terra, you instead take the role of Cells and have to gather the team together again to defeat Kefka in order to bring peace to the world he ravaged. Yeah, that's pretty much it for a main story in the world of ruin. Go and beat Kefka. But that's not what makes the world of ruin so amazing. It's more a mix of two major factors. First is the pure exploration factor. Once you get the new airship, you can basically go wherever you want. Sure, you can go fight Kefka, but if you want to go get all your teammates, you can get them in almost any order you want. Want to hunt down some of the best mag-type weapons and secret bosses? You can. Want to say fuck it and go fight Kefka now, like I just said earlier? Well, you can, good sir. This pure and total freedom to just do whatever you want was downright jaw-dropping, and I adored every second of it. And the other great aspect that makes it so great was the ending of several character arcs. See, while World of Ruin is rather light on a main story, it does do a rather great job at wrapping up several of the characters' long-running arcs. Terra finally finds her answer to what exactly love is. Locke and Cyan learn to let go of the past and the ones they've lost and move forward in life, one with a new love interest. You can get some interesting backstories for characters like Setzer and Shadow that give you more insight as to who they are underneath their facades. And once you're finished running around and doing your thing, you head off to confront Kefka, where you do one final team split and go kick his godly clown ass in one of the single coolest boss fights I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of. You save the world and move forward in life. And that is the end of the game. Oh, and of course, I cannot go on to cons just yet, not until I mention the absolutely stellar music. To keep this one short and sweet, every track is fantastic. Every song is beautiful. The battle themes, the overworld themes, the boss themes, it's all just pure perfection. Easily the best soundtrack of the game so far, beating out 4 for me personally. And that brings my section of pros to a close. This went on for a while, but I'm glad I was able to hopefully convey how much I loved this game. But now the time for the cons of Final Fantasy VI must be talked about. So let us do this. Okay, so when it comes to the faults of Final Fantasy VI, in truth, I actually don't have a whole lot to complain about. 6 does an excellent job at covering its weaker aspects to create a near flawless experience that everyone can love. But that doesn't mean I didn't end up having a couple of complaints in the long run. For one, the Emperor himself was pretty lame. Out of all the antagonists you face throughout the battle in 6, he is easily the most forgettable of the group, which is kind of an issue when you take the Emperor part of his name into account. You know, he's meant to be the leader and he's the most forgettable. Sure, he does a couple of things, but the amount of times he actually gets involved in the story itself can't even really be counted on one hand. He kind of ends up falling into the same lane as Duke Kanye West from Trails of Cold Steel 2, if you've played that one, where he seems like someone you're genuinely supposed to have to contend with, but ends up doing little to nothing and is outshined by other characters. He was probably in the end always meant to just get betrayed by Kefka, so it makes sense to make Kefka more interesting and him less interesting. And let's be real, that crazy clown bastard has enough personality to carry 5 game villains. But man, he really does feel like wasted potential the more you think about it. Other than that, I don't have anything else to complain about in terms of plot, so let's get into gameplay. Now, the basis of gameplay for 6 is honestly perfect. I have no issues with the combat in the slightest. Everything is pretty much perfect the way it is. Now, my complaints are actually just towards certain aspects of the side content you can choose to partake in. First is the Colosseum. Now, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this channel, but I fucking love Colosseums in video games. The idea of an area dedicated to you just going buck wild on a bunch of enemies for rewards is so fucking entertaining. Shout out to Yakuza for being one of the best series to ever handle Colosseums in games, and to an extent Kingdom Hearts. So when I saw that 6 had a Colosseum I could indulge in, I was ecstatic. Until I tried it and walked away extremely dissatisfied. I don't know whose idea it was to make the fight AI controlled, but goddamn did it kill any of the hype I had for it. Made even worse by just how brain dead the AI actually is. I could toss in a Sabin with Phantom Rush or a Terra that had learned Flare, and they would still choose some shit like Fyra or Libra instead. I tried to give it a chance, I really did, but good god it was not fun. Plus, in order to participate, you have to bet an item, and even if I do have a bit of a love for gambling, losing the fight due to busted ass AI and losing that item, forcing a restart, is not fun, and I'm not going to take the chance to sit through that. Anyways, enough about the Colosseum. Was there anything else? Oh yeah, the dragons. So in the World of Ruin, there are 8 dragons you can duke it out with, and once you defeat all 8, you obtain the Crusader Magtite, which teaches the spell Meteor. Sounds cool, right? Well, in truth, it actively comes with some problems. For one, in order to beat all 8 of them, you have to hunt down the 2 that are in Kefka's tower, and they're about 60% deep into the dungeon. So by the time you beat them and get the Crusader Shard, you're pretty much done with the entire game. So if you want to learn it, you're going to have to tack on some extra grinding right when you're almost done, which is, always fun. It's kind of baffled me that they were just in the final dungeon where you could have just put them anywhere on the map, but that's just me. What I think was even stranger was how they make this whole side quest of dragon slaying kind of pointless when you think about it. Sure, you can hunt down the dragon bosses and gain the spell Meteor, but you could also just go to the ancient castle area and get the Odin Shard. That, as long as you don't turn it into Raiden by talking to the stoned queen downstairs, and yes, that has more than one meaning nowadays, it just teaches you Meteor instead. Little bizarre of an oversight, right? Well, what if I told you that's not the end of it? Once you get Locke back from the Phoenix Cave, you can just go to Narsh and get the Ragnarok Shard, which teaches you the Ultima spell, the best spell in the entire game. And you don't have to fight dragons or anything for this, he just gives it to you. The more I think about it, why didn't they just make Ragnarok the shard you obtain instead of the dragons? And just keep the Meteor spell to Odin? Because they basically make hunting the dragons obsolete as a result. Thankfully, it's side content, so it isn't super damaging, and to be honest, the dragons are still some rather enjoyable bosses. But it is something that I've still kind of been baffled about. Maybe they expected that everyone immediately would turn Odin into Raiden? I haven't really been able to find any interviews about it or just any questions that have been answered, so it's really just going to have to boil down to a big ol' who knows on this. But that's all for that. On to my final issue, and that's the final boss itself. Now, the final battle with Kefka is awesome. Easily one of the best boss fights I've had in years. I got no beef with that. What I got problems with, however, is the 12 party member aspect of it. Right before the fight begins, you get to set up all 12 of the party members to prepare for a full crazy all-out battle. Awesome idea, right? 100% awesome. Is it executed well? No, not exactly. See, the only way to get a party member to swap out of one of the 4 currently in battle is to have them dead during the transition to the next phase of the fight, which is not great. Why not make it so that the party member just instantly swaps out once they die? Because there's no stopping me from just casting a rise on the dead member other than maybe some bad timing. Hell, if your whole party wipes out, you don't even swap out to the next 4. You just lose. So what the fuck happened to the other 8 members that I set up then? Did they just give up, go home? Did they end their own lives? Did Kefka kill them all screen? Did they go join the circus? I couldn't tell you. They just don't show up. I just do know that you can't have me set up 12 members and not let me swap into the reserve ones if my team wipes. That's such an oversight. It's so weird. And what makes it worse is that this is such a cool idea, and it's really a damn shame it's not executed very well. And that's pretty much all I have to say about the cons of this game. Yeah, I went a little more in depth, but there weren't really a whole lot to complain about. So it's time for my final thoughts. With this video finally coming to an end, I hope I conveyed to you all how much of an absolute masterpiece of a game Final Fantasy VI was. While I do end up having some complaints, I don't think it ever changed my opinion on it being one of the most high quality titles I've played basically ever. And honestly, I hope I really did do it justice with this review. Gotta admit, I was kinda scared putting this one out. Really didn't want to offend the people who love this game as much as they do. And again, I hope I gave it the respect it deserved. My final rating for this game is a phenomenal 9.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching another one of my videos. If you enjoyed yourself and want to see more RPG content, do me a solid and leave a like and sub down below, and maybe drop a comment if you're up for a chat or just want to help me out in the algorithm. Next couple of videos won't be Final Fantasy related, but I hope you will enjoy them all the same. I've had a lot of stuff cooking while I've been working on this one, and I think we're up for a great time. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time for more RPG content.